Alright friends, welcome back to the www.PlaidAvenger.com, where we just don't want to hear the news. No sir, we want to understand that news in a much bigger way. And of course, it's been a while since I've done a podcast. Sorry about that. I was doing a covert mission over in the Afghan area. That's right, because the biggest news that's been going down, of course, for the last couple weeks is the death of Osama Bin Laden. Yay, everybody cheers. And people have been writing me and phoning in saying, dude, isn't this the hugest big deal ever? Plaid Avenger, isn't this going to change everything? Talk about Osama Bin Laden, talk about Osama Bin Laden. And I actually have been remiss. I've been like, I don't know. I've actually not been that convinced that the death of Osama Bin Laden is really going to change that much for the U.S. strategy on the war on terrorism. I don't think it changes that much for the operations of al-Qaeda, although some details are coming out that maybe he was still up to a few things. But I mean, the dude's been in hiding for 10 years. I don't believe he's been doing that much, so his death initially did not impress me that much. I didn't really think that much of it. But I think there's a whole lot of things going on quietly behind the scenes that have been affected by Osama Bin Laden's death, and that's what I want to bring to you right now. Let's entitle this one, Bye Bye Bin Laden, Hello Taliban. What? How did I put those two things together? That's the big story that nobody's talking about right now, except me, of course, the Plaid Avenger. I think the death of Osama Bin Laden, the biggest impact, is going to be that the Afghanistan Taliban is going to have accelerated acceptance as a viable potential force in the government of Afghanistan. In other words, they're going to be legitimized. They're going to start being invited to the peace negotiating table to try to close up this whole Afghan war. And I think it's going to start happening quietly, and it's going to accelerate in a very big way very, very soon. Now, before I go any further, perhaps I should point out a few key terms of some groups I'm going to be talking about here so that you don't get confused by them. I'm going to point out the major groups involved in this whole mess and their major goals, because I think a lot of people in the United States, if not the whole world, are wildly confused about these groups, and it's important to distinguish who they are and what they're trying to do so you can understand this Afghan Taliban part. For starters, the Afghani Taliban, or the Afghan Taliban, is this pretty radical, pretty extremist, ultra conservative Islamic group that is anti-everybody in Afghanistan who ain't them, all right? They want their country back is the way that they're looking at it. That's their goal. They are the ones who are fighting against the United States and NATO troops ever since the invasion of Afghanistan over a decade ago. And their major goal is to kick everybody out so they can take back control of their country as they see it. And so they can rule it in this, again, ultra-Orthodox, ultra-extreme, bizarre manifestation of Islam, where all women are hidden and cloaked and behind closed doors, all children are beaten for fun on a daily basis, and it's just a paradise on earth for all old bearded men. Again, it's a very extreme view, and I'm not going to get into the semantics of exactly what they want and why they want it, but I want you to know that their primary goal is to re-establish control over Afghanistan, a country that they pretty much ruled for about a decade. They were kind of the government of Afghanistan prior to the U.S. NATO invasion in 2001. That's the Afghan Taliban. I want you to be sure to differentiate them from the Pakistani Taliban. See, it's getting confusing already. Taliban here, Taliban there. Yes, but it's two different Talibans with two very different goals. The Pakistani Taliban is kind of a splinter group from the original Afghan Taliban. And this happened because when the U.S. and NATO invaded Afghanistan, driving out both al-Qaeda and the Taliban forces, most of the Taliban leadership and most of all of the al-Qaeda folks fled to Pakistan, where they reset up shop, maybe started doing more terrorist organization stuff, and the Afghan Taliban leaders themselves were overseeing the war against the U.S. and NATO in Afghanistan. And they started spreading their messages, of course, of who they are and what they're all about. And a lot of Pakis, I shouldn't say a lot, some Pakistanis started to listen to the Taliban and their message and the way that they used to run Afghanistan. And they said, hey, We like that extremist version of Islam, and we want that for Pakistan too. And so slowly over the course of the last decade, a Pakistani Taliban has rose, and they are rising more and more every day and getting very strong and very dangerous. The Pakistani Taliban is anti-Pakistani government. They really don't care about Afghanistan. They want the death and destruction of the Pakistani government, but they're also anti-United States because they see the United States as a strategic ally of the Pakistani government, as propping up the Pakistani government, as corrupting the Pakistani government, and using the Pakistani government as puppets to fight their war on terror. So they hate the Pakistani government for being weak and not religious enough, and they hate the United States for propping up the Pakistani government, which isn't really happening, but that's what the Pakistani Taliban believes. They, of course, are conducting all sorts of terrorist strikes across Pakistan in an attempt to completely destabilize, if not completely destroy, the country itself. And they now have perhaps global aspirations to attack U.S. targets in Pakistan, but also outside of Pakistan too. And I'll come back to that. That is a very, very different animal than the Afghan Taliban. Finally, the last group that, of course, everybody knows about, it's al-Qaeda. Them al-Qaeda peeps, who are they? Al-Qaeda is another extremist, radical, fringe Islamic group who is anti everyone on the planet who is not a whacked out Islamic extremist like them. The al-Qaeda group has never run a country, never been a government. They have no aspirations to. They're not trying to run Afghanistan. They're not trying to overthrow Pakistan. They are just trying to spread their message of hate and destruction to all the Islamic people in the world, and they want everybody dead who's not Islamic. I take that back. They want even the Islamic people dead who aren't as extreme in vision as they are. That's al-Qaeda. That's the group that Osama Bin Laden, I guess, kind of founded and has kind of been the leader of for a decade or two, of course, until he just got killed about a week and a half ago. So you understand the three groups: the Afghan Taliban in Afghanistan, primary goal to recapture and re-control the Afghan territory. The Pakistani Taliban wants to overthrow Pakistan and make it into an extremist state in the Afghan model. And al-Qaeda, who wants to kill everybody who's not like them. And I wanted to point that out, particularly with al-Qaeda, that they're not just anti-Western. They're anti-everybody who's not them. And that's important to note because al-Qaeda, of course, is responsible for the death of way more Muslims than Western folks. Yes, I mean, the September 11th attacks were terrible. And killed 2,000 to 3,000 people. And there have been other attacks in other places that killed thousands of people. But they have killed, and this is al-Qaeda, thousands and thousands and perhaps tens of thousands of Muslims in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Africa, in Indonesia, in lots of places. Those guys are freak on the complete fringe. Okay, that's the groups. Let's get back to the message here.